Díomh tá sé seo faoin rialtas néireann ba cheartdom é seo a dhéanamh oscailge, mar ní higann an rialtas muid. The Irish government is currently rushing through the most significant overhaul of asylum law in the history of the state. They are moving so fast that the entire opposition bench, every major oversight body in the country, and the legal profession are agreed that this is reckless. Their stated reason for this rush is the EU deadline, but this bill goes way further than the EU asked for. And it includes things that bring specific financial benefits to specific political interests. This is the International Protection Bill 2026. It's 212 pages long and it was published on the 13th of January 2026. So let's first look at who is behind this bill. Jim O'Callaghan. Jim O'Callaghan was Bertie Ahern's lawyer during his defamation proceedings in the year 2000. He was a legal advisor for Fianna Fáil until 2016 when he became the TD for Dublin Bay South. In April 2016, he held a covert meeting at his house between himself, Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin's chief advisor, and a policy advisor to Enda Kenny. During the 2024 election campaigning, he publicly argued that the Justice Department needed new political control and direction. And he describes this bill as a reset of our international protection system. The other backer of this bill is the current Minister of State for Migration, Colm Brophy, who describes the bill as a shared European approach to asylum. This is the Irish Attorney General, Rossa Fanning. O'Callaghan confirmed that he and Fanning personally collaborated on the family reunification restrictions. This specific part that restricts the reunification of families was not in the general scheme when it went for pre-legislation scrutiny. It was only added after the Oireachtas Committee, the Ombudsman for Children, Doris, and the Irish Refugee Council had the opportunity to scrutinise the bill. Meaning you added something to a bill about family reunification after it had passed the Ombudsman for Children. So what does this bill actually do? These are the parts that the EU is requiring. Single procedure model, 6-month target for decisions, border procedure with a 3-month fast track, a new tribunal for asylum and return appeals, chief inspector of asylum border procedures, biometric enrolment, screening procedures and vulnerability assessments. There are some concerns with these already. Having one process that decides everything may make things faster on paper, but it also creates higher stakes for mistakes. And it means that proper early access to legal advice for asylums is critical because they essentially now only get one chance to tell their story. The 6-month target for decisions is good. It's aimed at stopping people being left in direct provision limbo where they can't work. The problem is if the system is under-resourced and under pressure, which it already is, then officials who process this paperwork are being measured in their career performance by speed, not accuracy. This almost guarantees shorter interviews, less evidence collection, and more refusals. The impact of this is that all decisions, appeals, and return orders have to be processed within 12 weeks. These compressed timelines increase the possibility of mistakes and do not account for the extra burden on these systems that are already under extreme pressure. This new tribunal for asylum and return appeals is also being marketed by the EU as reducing admin burden, making things more efficient. It says it aims to clear the backlog by streamlining procedure. But this is going to mean fewer full hearings and more paper-based or even AI decision-making. When oral hearings and proper justice are replaced by secret tribunals that use AI, mistakes are made and vulnerable people are re-exposed to trauma. The EU are also creating a new role, Chief Inspector of Asylum Border Procedures. This is a new independent rights monitor to oversee how border procedures are being run. On paper, this is a safeguard, someone whose job it is to watch for abuse. But the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission are concerned that the way that this is written gives the minister strong powers over appointment, removal, and resourcing, making the supposed independence a bit of a legal fiction. If the person in the role of inspector is politically controlled, you have the appearance of oversight without it. The EU are also bringing in biometric enrolment. Anyone who applies for protection will have their fingerprints and their photographs stored. This is simply for surveillance and monitoring. It is an infringement on your civic rights no matter who you are. They say it's going to make it easier for the authorities to spot someone if they've applied in one state and they try and apply to ours. Why are you so obsessed with what people do? This means long-term data storage, that has a cost, on people who have not and may never commit any offences. They just crossed a border in flee of war. For the person in the system who may not be system literate, this increases the margin for error. There may be good reason for inconsistencies, for example, fleeing a war zone with no documentation. The final EU request is screening processes and vulnerability assessments. This is supposed to flag people with special needs, disability, pregnancy, torture victims, trafficking victims, people with serious illness. It is, in theory, meant to identify them early and provide them with extra support. But in the bill, Ireland is only providing an early once-off assessment. Ireland is not providing for any kind of reassessments later in the process, even though the European Pact expects continuous checks. In reality, most people cannot disclose that they are victims of torture or sexual violence until they feel safe. So if you are going to ask only once at the border, most of those victims are going to be missed. The people who are writing this legislation are not trauma informed whatsoever, obviously. But the Irish weren't satisfied with that. We've gone further than anybody asked us to. Ireland has added a 3-year family reunification ban for refugees. Before a victim can be reunited with their family, they have to prove to the Irish government that they are financially self-sufficient and not in receipt of social welfare payments. That means whether or not you can even see your children after 3 years of being separated is completely at the mercy of the Irish jobs market, which is completely at the mercy of big fucking tech. That is disgusting. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? That's so gross and sticky. Why the fuck? No one in the EU asked him to do that. And they sent a version of this bill to the Children's Ombudsman and the Irish Human Rights Committee that did not include this. They pushed this through early in the fucking morning last week. They also pushed up residency requirements from 3 years to 5 and are saying that you need whatever the fuck good character is to become an Irish citizen. The Irish state will also now start to charge asylum seekers for their accommodation. Apple doesn't have to pay tax, but the victims of human trafficking and war crimes, they have to pay the Irish government for their shitty accommodation. And we are removing oral hearings at the appeal stage. No one in Europe has asked us to do that either. Financial context is essential to understanding why this bill exists, why Ireland made those amendments, and why they're rushing it through in the middle of the night. Asylum accommodation has now become a multi-billion euro private industry. In the year 2025, just 1 year, the Irish state spent 1.2 billion euro on asylum accommodation. That is a 20% increase in spending since 2024. In 2024, it was 1.1 billion, a billion of which went to private commercial contractors. In the last just 2 years, the Irish state could have built houses for every Irish person on the island and houses for another 1 million refugees if we wanted to, and we would have still had change from the amount that we have given to these private companies. I'm running out of time, but in part 2 I will tell you who those companies are and what you can do about it. Because this bill is going through the Senate this week, it's not too late to put them under some amount of pressure.